if there's a mess up with a gun trust, there was a phrase you used that I really liked: accidental felonies. This could actually be jail time for a big mistake. Hi, Jeff Marsace, the plain English attorney. I am here today with Jessica Metry of Metry Law. Jessica actually has a very interesting website. So, it's Metry Law, and she handles estate planning and equine law. So, she works with horses. So, Jessica, why don't you tell us a little bit about that and what you do? And then we'll get into the main topic of this video, which is gun trusts.
Yeah, well, hello there. So equine law is kind of a little niche, kind of in the law world. Um, Disputes with sales of horses, contracts, liability forms for like riding arenas. Those are kind of like common things that arise. But yeah, you'd be surprised. The sales of horses, lots of issues arise down the road. So that's kind of what it entails.
Okay. All right. The area of gun trusts is something that it's a little bit new for me and for some of my clients. They had been asking for a couple of years, just here and there, but I started seeing a lot more of this desire for it. And thankfully, the network that Jessica and I are both in, the Estate Planning Source, does have a gun trust. But can you tell us, Jessica, what exactly is a gun trust?
Yeah, so a gun trust is a separate standalone document that holds the title or just holds your firearms, your ammunitions, firearm accessories, anything firearm related, the gun trust will hold.
Okay. All right. One of the things that is a focus, there's Title One weapons and Title Two weapons. What's the difference? How are they treated differently?
Yeah, so those can kind of get confusing and convoluted. Excuse me. But Title One and Title Two are actually shorthand for where they come from. The Gun Control Act.
Mhm.
That's what controls the. That's the law that regulates them. So that's where they come into play. Title One guns are your um, general firearms that you kind of find in everyone's houses. If they have firearms, they're your typical pistols, shotguns, rifles, those types of things. They're not regulated as heavily. State laws differ for Title One gun laws. Most states still require those background checks. Some require more extensive stuff to get those Title Ones.
Mhm.
Title Two weapons are what are called restricted firearms, which means that they have to be registered with the federal government in order to own them, transfer them, or even create one, make one per se.
Mhm.
And those are machine guns, silencers, suppressors, which are the most common, and then like some military
Mhm.
stuff, which most states don't allow anyways. So
If you think it's important for educational videos like this to get out there, then please help us out by subscribing to the channel.
Okay, so even those military ones, there are some states that do allow it. Federally, you could have it, but your state could say, no, you're not allowed to have this.
correct,
Okay,
correct.
that was something I definitely did not
Yeah, state laws, they all differ, so it's fun.
know. Okay, so tell me a little bit specifically. I know that suppressors are Title II weapons, and that's one of the questions I'm typically getting in most of the calls from my clients saying, "Hey, do you do gun trusts? I want to get suppressors." Tell me just a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that's kind of the most common. It's it's the most common, most wanted item for Title II weapons. For instance, like Silencer Central. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but that's they
Mhm.
sell all the silencers, you know what I mean? But those are items that you would want to put into a gun trust because they have to be registered and etc. Um, and there's lots of issues that can arise, which we might go into later, but definitely a Title II weapon that I would highly suggest, even if you have a gun trust with just suppressors, I would say most people, that's kind of what they own.
Okay. All right. So how does the gun trust work in order to protect people? I mean, there are benefits. What are the big benefits of having a gun trust?
Yeah, so the most obvious one is avoiding probate with the gun trust. When you go through probate, everything's public, nothing's private, so everyone will know exactly what you owned and who it's going to. There's a tedious process that is involved for transferring registered items to the probate process. So one of my favorite benefit is avoiding probate. It can prevent accidental felonies if you have your suppressors and guns in a gun trust. This is because it's prohibited for certain people to own firearms, and it's also prohibited for anyone to possess a Title II weapon. So if you have a suppressor and it's registered in my name, technically, if I'm not around, my husband can't be off going hunting with the gun with the suppressor on it because it's registered in my name. That's a violation of the law.
Mm-hmm.
So gun trust can prevent that. They can, there's different things you can do to allow both of you to either possess it. And then it also just provides for if someone were to become a prohibited person, the gun trust has contingencies, so you don't have to sell your firearms or all of a sudden you're in violation of the law. So that one's another big one. And then it avoids court, if you want to list a beneficiary who's a minor, or if for some reason you become incapacitated for some reason, gun trust has provisions for that, which is super nice. Those would be my top 5.
Okay. Well, the other thing I hear with gun trust, suppressors is the first thing. The second is I don't want to pay all of these $200 fees. Tell us a little bit about how that's working.
Yeah. Yep. So that one was a tricky one to kind of navigate and get through, but it is possible. So the $200, it's like transfer tax. So if I were to own a gun and I were to sell it or transfer it to another individual right now, I'd have to pay $200 to transfer that gun to them. It's just a gun tax basically to Congress. With a gun trust, or if you were to die without a gun trust, those guns do pass tax-free if it goes to a lawful heir or beneficiary. If you go through the probate process, it's going to go to your next of kin. If you do a gun trust, you can list whoever you want as a beneficiary, and that would still, my understanding is that it would still avoid that $200 transfer tax, even if they're not a next of kin. So what I'm trying to do right now is my dad has a gun trust through a stinky gun mill, and I'm trying to update his beneficiaries to a different gun trust, and that should avoid the $200 transfer tax. But that's a different story.
So and this was kind of my understanding, and maybe I'm off. If you had a gun trust with 10 weapons in it, and you had, say, 10 people that you wanted to be beneficiaries, you wanted one to go to each of them. Well, if it just goes down to another gun trust with 10 co-trustees, you're just kind of having it go down. You're not having to distribute to all these different people. It's all going into one place. So you can go from gun trust to gun trust.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Yet I did a little bit of looking into this on my own as well. That the whole kind of history was really interesting. The $200 fee was really when the National Firearms Act came into play way back in the 30s. And it was because of all of these bootleggers and gangsters. They were having machine guns in the streets, and we got to crack down on this. And it's okay, if we put a $200 transfer fee, okay, that's going to eliminate a lot of that, but it's still $200 today.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. It didn't go up or anything. It's still $200 from the 1930s. So,
yes.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like there are good benefits for a gun trust. What doesn't a gun trust prevent against? And maybe you've heard some people say, oh yeah, I've got a gun trust. I can't get sued or something like that.
Yeah. So the gun trust is revocable, so it doesn't protect you from creditors. It doesn't protect you if you use the gun in a crime, confiscation, things like that.
Hmm.
And then a really big thing is that you're still liable. You're still liable for the use of your gun, and still liable for those who use the gun or the item or suppressor along with you. So it doesn't liability is still there. Doesn't relieve it in any way.
Hmm.
I will note that with the gun trust, if you appoint a co-trustee, which is another really big benefit of the gun trust, because then it allows I could appoint me and my husband as trustees, and then we can both legally use and possess that suppressor or that item.
Hmm.
But joint and several liability will arise there,
Okay.
according to the National Firearms Act. So just some concerns there. If you appoint a co-trustee, make sure you trust them, and they are educated in firearms. So
Okay. And that's another thing that I had started in looking into this a little bit. You can get pretty custom with some of these gun trust provisions. So if it's all right, you want to have it passed down to the next generation or to other people, you can go ahead and put in as a condition of their inheriting that they have to go through certain types of training and things that might be in
mm,
excess of whatever the federal or state regulations are, just because you want to be extra safe. So you can
yeah.
put other provisions like that into a gun trust. All right. So, how should a gun trust kind of be coordinated with the overall estate plan?
Yeah, so it should be a standalone document, integrated into your full estate plan, kind of like a special estate preservation vehicle. So I would have your revocable living trust or whatever else you have, and then I would have that gun trust along with it.
Okay. So it's just another component. It's not in place of anything,
No.
and it's not that you're actually kind of sticking the language in your revocable trust. This is one of those vehicles where it makes more sense to have it be a separate entity.
Yeah, there's lots of fancy language according to the Gun Control Act, the National Firearms Act that gets feels kind of lengthy, but it's important to have it in the gun trust. So it does not make sense to kind of throw it in with the revocable trust. I don't think it would function properly.
Okay. All right. So the other thing that I found in looking into things, there are particularly like the suppressors manufacturers and dealers. They're like, go ahead and get our suppressor. We'll give you a free gun trust. I hear that and I think about, yeah, download your free revocable living trust and you just know it's going to be a disaster. If you've reviewed some of these, what are some of the points that you've seen that either it doesn't work or no, what's out there is actually pretty good? What's your experience?
So I've had a couple experiences already. My opinion is that I would advise someone to actually contact an attorney. It is super convenient when you buy a suppressor, like through Silencer, that
Hmm.
they'll issue this trust with it or whatever, and then it just gets transferred into that trust. But the issues that I have already come across is they don't look at your overall estate plan. They don't talk to you about like what are your intentions, what are your wishes, who do you actually want your beneficiaries to be for this gun
Hmm.
trust. For example, my dad has one through Silencer Central, and just to list a few of the issues that we have is beneficiaries are listed incorrectly. There is no form of like we have been trying to get a hold of someone to get us the documents to update them, and we're talking to a brick wall. So that's really fun and hard to try and either update it or amend it. Lots of issues with that. And then another fun one is my uncle got a gun trust, not through Silencer Central, through something totally different, a template gun trust, but through a person that like did them, I think, for $700. And it came back with all these errors, and he's now making his own amendments to his gun trust and like asking me how to write verbiage. And I'm just like, I don't even.
Oh.
this isn't even he was listing as beneficiaries, and I'm like, that's not your intentions as from what you told me, but this is how it's reading. So
Yeah.
there's really big implications that can happen from it. It's convenient, but it's really not worth the headache or the money. Just from my experience and that's like little experiences, and it's been a big headache. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's like I said, I cringe every time I see that. It also kind of reminds me of the stuff that we probably see in reviewing estate plans. I mean, not too long ago, some clients, here's our trust, and we got it 20 years ago. And I'm flipping through it, and it's clear they pulled pages out, put new pages in because it's a different typeface, and they think, oh, I'm initialing and signing, it's fine. And then there are other places where there's whiteout and something else written over it, and it's
oh
like
gosh.
multiple sections. I'm like, I I can see this whole thing just being thrown out. So maybe you're even getting like one of the very most basic gun trusts free from the company, but it just compounds the mistakes if you're trying to
Mhm.
perform surgery on it yourself.
Yeah, yes. And then like if you wanted to amend it or update it, we've had issues doing that. So there's I don't know if it's they're so large or what, but good luck getting a good amendment.
Yeah, and I can see it being just kind of like a, all right, just kind of take it or leave it.
Mhm.
And the mistakes that can happen with estate planning, and all right, if we set up a revocable living trust the right way and something doesn't get funded into the trust, okay, that item goes through probate. And if you've got a pour over will, all right, it eventually makes it into the trust with the right plan. If there's a mess up with a gun trust, there was a phrase you used that I really liked: accidental felonies. This could actually be jail time for a big mistake.
Mhm.
What are some potential situations for a quote accidental felony?
Yeah, so the most common one was kind of like what I was saying. Like if I have a suppressor registered in my name and my husband goes and uses it. Another fun one is you have a gun in your trunk with a suppressor on it. You're driving down the road and you don't even know it because your husband put it there or something. Those are all accidental felonies that can arise. Transferring your guns to someone who is listed as a beneficiary, but they're actually prohibited from owning firearms due to certain, there's like 10 to 12 different list of crimes. Federally,
Mhm.
state might be different. They're usually the same, but they could be more. If a gun is to transfer to someone who's prohibited to owning firearms, that's a felony. Where the gun trust provides language that says the trustee has to abide by that law and make sure that the intended beneficiaries aren't prohibited from possessing firearms.
Mhm.
Um, so that's really nice to have incorporated in it. And then also, if like me, let's say I did something stupid and now I'm prohibited from owning firearms, it would prevent most of the time you'd have to like sell your firearms right away because I can't legally own them. And this
Mhm.
is Title One and Title Two weapons. So this isn't
Mhm.
just suppressors. This is like your normal shotgun and rifles. The gun trust controls and says that I'm basically removed for the interim, and then my successor trustee steps in, and now they manage those guns. They take possession of them and they hold them for me until it gets resolved. It can be pretty common in one of the ones. I don't have it in front of me, but it's like a order for protection.
Mhm.
If there's an order for protection against you, you're not allowed to possess or own firearms. So that can be pretty common. So that gun trust would provide a mechanism for it to kind of quote unquote transfer or someone else to kind of step in your shoes for the meantime without having to sell your guns.
Yeah. Now, and the fact is, just one last piece to the whole thing. Like you said, states have their own rules. One of the things that I've seen is whenever the gun trust is coming up, people are just thinking about Title II weapons.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned having it in title, even your Title I weapons in a gun trust just to avoid probate could be a big deal. North Carolina, this is my state where I looked at it. Probate cannot close until the federal transfer paperwork is
Mhm.
done. So even if everything else is done with probate, you can't close the estate until the federal paperwork is done and approved in order to transfer those weapons out. If it's in the gun trust, well, it's not part of probate. You still have to do the paperwork, but it's not holding everything else up.
Yeah.
So just one more benefit.
Totally.
All right. So, do you have your own gun trust yet, or are you still working on that?
So I've actually been bugging the state planning source to kind of, I'm like, give me a mini summer. I need to, because I do need one. I need to roll one
Yeah.
out. I will have to pay some transfer tax to transfer from my individual name into the trust, but once it's in there, it'll be smart. So yeah, I'm intending to do one. I just haven't bugged the state planning source enough.
Okay. All right. Well, again, we are here with Jessica Metry of Metry Law at metrylaw.com. We will go ahead and put a link in the description. So thank you for being with us today, Jessica. It's
Yes,
been
you're
a lot of
welcome.
fun talking about gun trusts, and I'm sure we'll be talking in the future.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.